Thank you. Thank you so much for that welcome. I appreciate it. First off, there's one thing I promised somebody I'd do before we even got started, so if you'll humor me real quick. Everybody smile. I don't know if we can see in the camera or not, but there we go. I'm gonna send that one. I'm gonna send that one to my mama later. She's gonna be real proud. No, so I tell you what, I'm super thankful for your welcome. I thank you very much for the invitation to even be here. And frankly, I'm a little bit surprised. I'm a little bit nervous. I haven't spoken publicly in a long time. So again, thank you for that invitation. So nervous, though, that when I first found out that I was going to be coming to do this, I felt a lot like the mosquito at the nudist colony. I mean, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I just didn't even know exactly where to start. I mean, just there's so many different options, so many different directions. So I tell you what I did. Hey, I'm glad that went over well. I wasn't sure how it would go. No, the very first thing I did what any normal person would do. I told everybody in my whole family. I mean, I went and I told everybody, and the best reaction that I got from anyone was from my sweet mama. Oh my goodness, that's why I'm going to send her that picture in a little while. I told her, I said, Mom, I got the invitation to give a keynote speech at the Georgia Young Farmers and Ranchers Conference, and she said, You got the invitation to give a speech? It's been years since you've given a speech. She said, that's great, that's fantastic, but I got to ask, who backed out? So, just shots fired. And I told her, I said, well, as a matter of fact, Mom, somebody did back out, but that's okay. They were important. It was supposed to be Governor Kemp or Donald Trump or somebody, somebody real political, somebody important, but they got busy doing political things, and so they invited me. She didn't miss a beat. She said, they were going to have a political figure come and talk, and they asked you that. They must have been pretty desperate. All right, thanks, Mom. I appreciate that confidence. But no, all jokes aside, my family and I, we're all very proud at this opportunity for me to come and speak, and we're just willing to admit the obvious. It's been a long time since I've done this, so I am rusty. I forewarn you. Just bear with me, be patient with me. But I'm excited about this opportunity, and I want to thank all of you again because I've heard so many great things about this organization. I've heard so many wonderful things about the people who are involved at Georgia Young Farmers and Ranchers. So if it wasn't for all of you, my fellow farmers and ranchers and ag industry members, I would have never agreed to come up here and tell the personal stories that I'm going to tell. So just thank you so much. A round of applause for all of you for just being here. Thank you real quick. I was asked to come here and speak about mental health and well-being in the industry, and that is a very hot topic. It's a personal topic, and it is an important topic to me. And before we even get into it, though, first and foremost, I got to get back to my family. I've got to tell you a little bit more about where I'm from, where I grew up. So I was born and raised in the booming metropolis of Plant City, Florida. Okay, we've got a couple people, maybe one or two people, who have actually been to the Strawberry Festival in Plant City. That's right. The winter strawberry capital of the world. That's where I was born and raised. On my family's fifth generation strawberry production operation. I mean, fifth generation, that's something. I mean, my dad farmed, his dad's daddy farmed. I mean, there's a whole lot of farming going on. We never went without strawberry jelly growing up. And frankly, you didn't even ask for grape jelly, otherwise you were a traitor. I mean, but I would have never had it any other way. I loved it. I love the tradition. I love the heritage of growing up in that household and at that farm level. It was amazing. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to have some pictures up here real quick. We'll scroll through. Third, fourth, and fifth generation right there. That's me in the overalls over on the left side. That's my older brother, Mark. That's my dad, Marty, and my grandpa, Buddy. That picture's from early 90s. Probably we'd have to ask the family historian, but I don't know exactly. And we'll go to the next one. So that's fast forward. That's around 2006, 2007. Same thing, third, fourth, and fifth generation. I am proud of my family for being involved in the ag industry for so long, as I'm sure that many of you. We heard from the Creases. We've got first generation startups. We've got other folks who have been in it for multiple generations. As all of you are, I'm sure that we're all proud to be a part of this. And growing up, it was absolutely always a family affair. Always. We were all pitching in as much as we could, all hands on deck. And when my brother and I weren't busy with school and extracurricular activities, we were at the farm. We were helping Mom and Dad and my grandpa. We were doing everything we could to help out. And whenever somebody in the the community or the neighborhood would ask what we wanted to be whenever we grew up, my dad would just kind of stand back with his fingers crossed saying, please say doctor, just please say doctor. That true story, that didn't get any laughs, but that was really one of my dad's jokes growing up. He always told everybody that whenever they would actually listen. He'd say, one day I'm going to have those boys flip a coin, and one of them's going to be a mortician, and the other one's going to be an obstetrician. And people would say, oh my goodness, why would you say that? That was his joke, and he'd say it. He'd say, well, people may not always want strawberries, but every single day somebody's being born and somebody's dying. It's called job security. Yeah. I tell you what, that joke's a whole lot funnier when you know what those words mean. It is. When I was little, I'd sit there and listen to that joke, and I'd look at my brother and say, he's talking to you, big boy. I don't know how to play either of those instruments. But no, I absolutely loved it. I loved growing up in that. And the agriculture industry has always meant so much to me. And sitting here talking to a group of young farmers and ranchers, I guarantee that a lot of you feel the same exact way that my brother and I did growing up. When farming is in your blood, it is absolutely and forevermore in your blood. And I knew from an early age that I wasn't going to stray too far from the ag industry. Now, don't get me wrong, I did develop some hobbies and interests along the way. I mean, I found out that I really enjoyed media and videography, so as a matter of fact, we got an example for you here if you want to roll that beautiful farm footage. They say nowadays probably only one in every maybe 679,000 people actually grows up to be a cowboy. You basically have to be born with ranching in your blood, kind of like I was. So naturally, when I went to college, I knew that I was going to study agribusiness. When I graduated and got my degree, I was going to come home and run the most successful cattle operation this side of the Mississippi. But I found out real quick that getting a college degree is kind of like raising cattle. It's expensive. I came home from college loaded down with student debt, and I kind of had to make a few sacrifices. Do you know how hard it is to be a full-time cowboy when you can only afford half a horse? The other cowboys don't take us seriously. Hey, we're gonna call him Fingers because he's not a full ranch hand. Even the cows don't take us seriously. Go around. Go around. But even when cutbacks are being made, I'm still supporting Natty Light. So Natty, how about you support me by helping squash this beef that I have with my college debt? And together, we'll prove to everybody that success really does come from cans. I don't know if I'm more happy that you laughed or more embarrassed that we actually played it. I don't know. But, I tell you what, the real hero in that story is Baxter, the half-day horse. All right, half the size of the other cow horses, doing twice the work, and he's doing it for half the pay. I mean, he's the real hero there. But I battled with actually playing that video, but I had a handful of folks, and you know who you are in the crowd. They said, you've got to play the Natty Light video. I said, okay, so you're welcome. But I'm sure there's some other people in the crowd sitting there scratching their heads saying, are we sure this is the right guy for the job? He's the one going to talk to us about mental health and well-being? He ain't right. Well, I tell you what, I ain't wrong either. Baxter and I were in the running for $40,000 on that video. So we tried really hard. We didn't win, but we did try hard. I guess at the end of the day, you could say we came up a little short. But no, all jokes aside, I tell you those stories. I share that video with you. I just want each and every one of you to know as you're listening today that when it comes to the agriculture industry, when it comes to production, I understand a lot of the stresses and a lot of the risks that go along with it. I sat in here earlier and I listened to the folks during the discussion meeting. We talked a lot about mental health and well-being and the risk of mental issues. And folks, I know they're all too real. I know they are. And even now, I don't live in Georgia. I live down the road in Florida, but I get to work with a lot of growers in Georgia and throughout the Southeast now that I work with Seminous Vegetable Seed. And I understand the issues that we're facing. Now, whether it be weather-related issues, we're battling hurricanes and rebounding and rebuilding after hurricanes. There's pests, disease, there's insects, there's always market-related issues, wages, labors, all sorts of different things. Not only do we have so much stress and so much worry in our day-to-day lives, but on top of that, you factor in the fact that we live and work in an industry that has so much inherent risk and volatility that the potential for mental health-related issues are just that much more significant. And folks, I'm very pleased to hear that it's been such an open debate and such an open topic here since I've shown up, because for far too long I feel like it's been an elephant in the room that people are not willing to address. And for all of you to actually understand where I'm coming from, for you to really believe me, I want to tell you a little bit more about my family and my upbringing. So I want to tell you specifically about my senior year in high school. So it was November in my senior year of high school. And folks, I got to tell you, senior year me, I wasn't an athlete or anything like that, and you can probably tell, but I thought I had it figured out. Oh my goodness, I was cruising along through senior year. I was making good grades. I was ready to graduate. I was going to get my diploma. When I got done, I was going to run for state FFA office. I was going to be the best state officer that Florida had ever seen. And then when I got done with that, I was going to go to the University of Florida. I know we don't have very many fans here, but that's where I wanted to go. I was going to study agribusiness, and one day on my way to class, it was going to be just like a romantic comedy. I was going to drop my books, and some woman was going to come up and help me pick them up or something like that, and then we were going to fall madly in love. We were going to graduate together, get married, go home, run the family farm, and have kids, maybe buy a dog. It was going to be the dream. I mean, it was perfect. Now let's just pause and take a step back away from my fairy tale fantasy dream world, and I'll tell you about what was really going on in real life at that particular time. So it was November of my senior year of high school. My dad had a rule of thumb growing up in the berry industry. All right, he would always say, if you have your plants in the ground by Halloween, you'll have your first berries by Thanksgiving. Now that wasn't concrete, that wasn't definitive, it was a little flexible. You could deviate from it from time to time, but that was always his deal. He said, plants in the ground by Halloween, you'll have your first fruit by Thanksgiving. So just to make sure that we've got a few folks paying attention, help me out with that. We're going to go over it one more time. If you have your plants in the ground by Halloween, that's right, then you'll have your first berries by. Aaron, my job is done. They're farmers. They've got it figured out. I wish you all the best of luck with your future endeavors in the strawberry industry. No, that really was my dad's rule of thumb. So here it is, November, my senior year. We've had plants in the ground since late October. We've watched them take root. We've watched them live in. These plants have taken off. They're growing. They're getting ready. And we're going to have berries by Thanksgiving. Folks, life is good. Because when those berries come in, we start harvesting. That means paychecks. And paychecks is good. So we were excited. We were looking forward to it. Holidays are almost here. Everybody was looking forward to this upcoming harvest. But then we got this industry-wide notification that something was a little amiss in the Plant City strawberry industry. I'll tell you what we heard. So we got this notification that some plants in the area had tested positive for anthracnose. Well, what does that mean? Didn't mean a whole lot to us. We've been out there every single day. We've watched these plants grow. We've watched them. They've been looking good. They've been doing great. Well, let me give you a little more background information. We found out that the plants that had tested positive for anthracnose, they came from this very large nursery operation that provided a significant amount of berries for the entire Hillsborough County and Plant City strawberry growing region. Well, still didn't mean a whole lot to us, but we could drive around town, look at the neighbor's farm. You could look at friends' farms down the road, and you just see these hot spots popping up all over the place. Just these almost like crop circles. And they'd just get wider and wider, and they'd spread out farther and farther. Just these plants wilting down, dying out. It was pretty miserable looking, but we felt really fortunate. We felt really blessed because, again, we go to our farm, and everything seemed to be okay. Well, folks, I want to tell you something that I learned about anthracnose that particular year. So for all my plant pathologists and my plant nerds, you might be interested in this. But that anthracnose, a lot of times it most often is spread from the nursery stock and then it's spread out in the field. And this anthracnose can express itself in multiple different forms. That particular year, we were seeing the most common expression was anthracnose crown rot. Anthracnose did just as the name indicated, crown rot. It would get into the crown of that berry plant, and when it set in, it would essentially rot down the crown, render it completely useless. It couldn't uptake nutrients. It couldn't uptake water. It couldn't feed and water the plant itself. So it'd start withering down and dying. Ladies and gentlemen, it was almost as if overnight we showed up to our farm. You could look across the whole entire field, and it almost looked like somebody just had a hold of those plants just right like that, squeezing the life out of them. And they were wilted down. You could tell that they had the anthracnose. Well, what do you do at a time like that? It's too late to reset. Well, first off, you're not going to find any plants anywhere to reset. And second off, if you do, you're way outside of your window. So you've pretty much missed the boat either way. Some people say, well, could you spray them? What about that? No. At that point, once that anthracnose is set in, any sort of spray or chemical application is going to be a Band-Aid. It's going to be throwing good money at a bad situation because nothing is going to change the fact that those plants are dying. And they were dying that year from anthracnose crown rot. Talking to a group of young farmers and ranchers, and especially after listening to some of the discussion and debate earlier today, I bet you that a lot of you have been in a similar situation. Maybe it's much worse, or maybe it wasn't near as bad, but that feeling that we had just looking out across the entire operation and seeing all of your plants, your entire crop, just essentially dying right in front of you, knowing that you're not going to harvest it. That is a punch in the gut reality check of a feeling. You can almost just visibly see your opportunity for any sort of profit, your opportunity to finally make a little bit of money. After multiple bad seasons, hey, we needed it. We needed to make some money. And you just see that chance to make some money just vanish right in front of you. It is a miserable, miserable feeling, just wondering how you're going to get out of that situation. And the absolute icing on the cake on top of that was we had a forklift breakdown at the same time. I wish Jim would have been there with some of his Caterpillar equipment. But we had a forklift breakdown, and I see some confused looks on some faces. That seems like it pales in comparison to your entire crop dying off. You know, why are you worried about a forklift? Well, I'll tell you exactly why. I remember all the details to that forklift breaking down. Because while we have all these issues going on with the strawberry crop, at the very same time, we still have cows that we've got to take care of. Well, it's November time, as I said. Winter it's right around the corner. So we went ahead and we had bought a load of hay, and we were waiting for this load of hay to show up, and we were going to unload it and have it ready for the cows. But as luck would have it, the load of hay is running late. Why wouldn't it? Of course it's running late. Everything else is going wrong. Why wouldn't the load of hay run late too? So we waited and we waited. It was a Saturday, and it got later and later in Saturday evening. Finally, the load of hay showed up, and we hopped to it like soldiers. My dad was on the forklift. He was bringing rolls of hay off the trailer, and then we were running around on tractors with hay forks, and we were sticking rolls of hay and moving them and assembling them as we saw fit, and that's when it happened. Late Saturday evening, that forklift broke down, and it was one of those moments like you're probably going to see one of your parents get real mad or something like that, and you just kind of hold your breath because you don't know what's going to happen. It was like that. So we all just kind of sat back waiting to see what the response was going to be. But I'll tell you what, my dad was super calm and super cool about it. He went ahead and he just said, you know what? It's late. It's Saturday evening. He said, this stuff can wait till tomorrow. The forklift can wait till tomorrow. The hay can wait till tomorrow. He said, we're going to get this all sorted out later. Let's just go ahead and call it a day. So we did. We went ahead and we called it quits. We got cleaned up. My dad took every single one of us to group dinner that night. I still remember to this day, he took us to Applebee's and we had dinner. The next morning, Sunday morning rolls around. My feet hit the floor and I am ready to put on my work clothes, pull on my work boots. I'm going to go to the farm. I'm going to help my dad fix a forklift. We're going to move the hay. And at least for that small fleeting moment, even with all the berry stuff going on, something is going to go back to normal. Something is going to get fixed. And I was ready to do that until he stopped me. He had other plans. He said, I'll take care of that forklift. I'll take care of all the hay. He said, I'd rather you do something else. He said, I'd rather you go to church with your mom. He said, church is where you need to be today. I said, all right, Dad, I can do that. So I went to church that day with my mom, while my dad went to work on the forklift. Somewhere during that sermon, during that period from 11 to 12, I was sitting next to my mom. We were in the pew. We were listening to the preacher as he delivered that sermon. And I have to imagine that at the same exact time, my dad was at the farm, and he was working on that forklift. He was probably elbow deep in grease, working on it, cussing and fussing at it like I'm sure plenty of us would have been. Maybe my dad was worried, thinking about the berry crop that was dying off. And maybe he was concerned, thinking about checks that weren't going to come in and thinking about bills that would be coming in. Whatever it was, whatever my dad was concerned about that particular day, my dad made the ultimate decision that this world no longer needed him in it. My dad decided that day, that Sunday, to take his own life. And I'm sorry, folks, I don't ever tell this story in front of anybody. I'm sorry. The coroners marked my dad's date of death as Tuesday, November 20th of 2007. But I know that's not the case. It was Sunday, November 18th of 2007. My dad turned off his cell phone. He left the farm, he left the forklift, he got in his truck, and he drove to the south end of the county, and my dad took his own life at a farm that belonged to one of his lifelong industry role models and members in the farming community. To this day, I have no idea why he did that. I'm assuming that there was probably some sort of sentimental purpose to going there. I also imagine that he probably wanted to get as far away from us as possible so that he didn't run the risk of his family being the ones to find him. But whatever the rationale was, whatever the purpose was, because my dad decided to go all the way down there to do that, for 2 days, all Sunday and all Monday, my family searched and searched in all the wrong places, and we had no idea where to find him. We had no phone calls, we had no text messages, we had no notes, no knowledge of where in the world he might be. Until Tuesday morning rolled around and we got the update that my dad's truck and his body had been recovered. I know to this day that it was Sunday, November 18th, that my dad passed away. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't share that story or tell that story for any sort of sympathy or pity or anything. I promise you I don't, and I hope you don't think that. I really don't. I tell you that story because I want to go back and reiterate that when I say that I understand the stress and the risk and the volatility that comes along with this industry, I mean it. I really do. And when I say that the idea of mental health issues in the industry is an elephant in the room, I promise you, it is. And it's something that deserves to be talked about. Just real quick, I'd like to ask everybody in here to do something, if you would. Everybody, please raise your hands. I'm going to get right about here, and I'm going to draw an imaginary line right down the center of this room. And so, if you don't mind, everybody from here over, go ahead and lower your hands. Thank you so much. Over on this side of the room, this half, I'm going to make the assumption that of this entire group, we've probably got a 50-50 split between males and females. So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and please have the ladies just go ahead and lower your hands. I want everybody to take a look at the hands that are still raised. Gentlemen, you can go ahead and lower your hands. Thank you. By my rough math, I'm going to make the assumption that that's about 25%, 1/4 of this room. 25%. Current statistics show that on average, 1 out of every 4 to 5 Americans, 20 to 25% of all Americans will battle some sort of mental health related issue at some point in their life. So whether we realize it or not, that's 1 out of every 4 to 5 people in this country, and maybe even in this very room, who is one day going to battle some sort of a silent battle that none of us can see. Folks, those are stiff odds, and we have got to do a better job at trying to fight them. We have to. When I first got the invitation to come and give this speech, I promise you, I was excited, but I was nervous. I still am nervous, if you can't tell. I'm nervous because I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you any surefire way of detecting a mental health related issue. I can't tell you some sort of a concrete, foolproof plan of battling it if you do detect it. Folks, I'm not even a professional keynote speaker. I'm just up here telling stories. But I tell you what, I've experienced it. I've been through it, and I've seen that fight. I lost my dad to it. And in the wake of losing my dad, my family and I, we had to sit around and just take all those shattered pieces and try and piece them all back together. and keep that family farm operation running even after the loss of him. So no, I promise you I'm not a professional, but I'm at least willing to stand up here and tell my story in the hopes that it will help somebody. The very first thing that I usually get, somebody hears that story or they find out about what happened to my dad, and this is what I usually get. So are you telling me that there was no sort of signal or indication? Are you telling me that you really didn't notice anything? It couldn't have been fixed? Folks, I promise you, that was not the case. We saw no symptoms. We saw no signals. Did my dad get stressed? Absolutely. Who in here that's involved in agriculture doesn't get stressed at some point in time? Did my dad worry about things? Yes, my dad worried. But would my dad do something like that? Absolutely not. That didn't happen to people like us. That didn't happen to our family. That's for the movies. That's for the news. It was just unreal up until it happened. And then it hit real close to home. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a firm believer that we have to do a better job at being a little more accountable for one another. Especially the folks who are near and dear to us. We've got to be a little bit more accountable in terms of checking in on them. Now, I was listening and I was hearing a little bit more about, I believe it was Wiley's presentation. He talked about the third man, about being that third man for somebody. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to echo that a little bit and tell you, we have got to do a better job at checking in on one another. Shooting somebody a text, giving them a call, having a conversation with them, seeing if they're doing all right. Folks, I don't just mean the ones who are visibly stressed out or upset. That's a given. Check in on those folks. But even think about the people like my dad. The ones who you don't see any sort of symptoms and you don't think anything is wrong at all. Check in on those folks and just see how they're doing. Because in my experience, a lot of times the people who are struggling the most can be putting on the best facade. I have to believe that it's those individuals that they know how awful it feels to feel so negative. They know how bad it feels to just bear all that burden. And they don't want to share it with anybody else. They don't want you shouldering that with them. So instead, they bottle it up and they repress it. And they just keep it real tight to themselves. And that's one of the worst things that they can do. In my opinion, I believe that mental health related issues are a lot like an iceberg. You may see very little, if anything at all, at the very tip of it, but you dig down beneath the surface and there's a whole lot more going on. And maybe we can help by checking in with each other to try and uncover that and uncover what's going on. But somebody in the discussion meet mentioned earlier today that we have to be more proactive, and folks, I'm going to mirror that as well. I'm going to echo that a little bit. We have to be more proactive because something I think we need to do is we need to do a better job at breaking down and just throwing out that stigma that it's not all right to not be all right. It's not just about us checking in on other people. It's the folks who are actually going through these issues. We have to do a better job at vocalizing that, at actually opening up and communicating whenever something really is bothering us. Now, just out of curiosity, just sort of in line with that note, I want to ask each and every one of you in here, by a quick show of hands, how many of you have been driving down the road at some point in time and you notice your check engine or your service engine light come on while you're driving? That's what I figured. There's going to be a lot of hands. If you're over the age of 16 years old, you drive regularly, your hand was probably up. But my follow-up question is, out of everybody who raised your hand, how many of you see that check light or see that service light and you just keep on driving for a little while? Hey, I'm guilty of it. Same thing. Every now and then you got to squeeze a little extra goodie out of it before you take it in. I get it. I know how it is. But matter of fact, let me share a story with you. And it's not another sad one. Don't worry. It's not a sad one. It was earlier this very spring. I was in my truck and I was going up to the wonderful town of Americus. Anybody been there? Oh, we got a couple of people. I love that town. And I hunt in that town. And I was going... I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I was on interstate, and I remember exactly when, why, where. I remember all the details when all this happened and everything. How do I want to put this diplomatically? I'm not going to say that I wasn't going up to Georgia for work-related purposes, but I'm also not going to say that it wasn't opening weekend of turkey season. So we'll leave it at that. But either way, I'm in my truck, and I'm headed up north on interstate. I'm headed to Americus, and I'm about halfway there, and that's when I hear it, just that awful noise where you know something is going wrong with your truck. I mean, I can tell that it's shifting funny, it's catching gears awkwardly. I mean, I don't have to be a professional mechanic to know that something is wrong with my transmission. But Service light hasn't come on yet, so it can't be too bad. And then on top of that, I'm going to be real with all of you. It was opening weekend of turkey season. I wasn't about to pull over for that noise to skip turkey season, so I kept on driving. I got all the way up to Georgia. I hunted all weekend long. I'm going to digress for just a second and let every one of you know. I don't know what was going on in the state of Georgia that particular weekend, but your opening weekend of turkey season was terrible. It was bad. I don't know if it was a weird weather-related front or something, but all weekend long, just imagine me decked out in my camo, walking through the woods, just yo, 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 yo. Nothing. I could not buy a gobble, could not find a bird for anything. So by the end of the weekend, I am defeated. I'm over it. I'm ready to go back to Plant City. It is calling my name. I'm ready to go home. So I get in my truck. I get on the road. I'm headed back home, and sure enough, as luck would have it, I'm halfway back home, and here it comes again. I just hear that noise. Oh, not today. I'm going home. I'm headed home. So I keep on driving. About that time, the service light finally comes on. It got me. Oh, folks, it is for sure at this point, I know something is definitively wrong. The service light is on. I know something's wrong with my truck, but I weighed my options. I thought about it. I'm this close to home. It's a Sunday evening. Who am I really going to take this truck to at this point anyways? I could probably make it. Hey, I can make it. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to ease on. No sooner had I thought everything was going to be okay, I keep on driving, and that's when it happened. Oh yeah, just truck shuts down on me, and I have to wheel it over on the side of interstate. I'm sitting on the shoulder of I-75, traffic blowing by me. I sat there and thought about my options for a little bit. I shift the truck into park. I pull the key back out of the tumbler. I sit there and I think about what it's done. Shame on this truck. I'd done my best to fix it when I heard the noise. I turned the radio up. I thought about my options. I cranked the truck back up. I shifted over to manual, and I ran through the gears in manual. And as luck would have it, it looked like I had second and third gear still. What did I do? I heard a laugh up front. You probably guessed it. I got off at the next exit, and I ran my truck home 40 miles an hour in second and third gear. But I got it home. Yeah. There's some of you in the crowd that are probably nodding saying, hey, I'd have done the same thing in that situation. There's some people on the opposite end of the spectrum, not like us, and they probably think that was a bad idea. Well, first off, don't judge. Second off, if you think about it, that's really similar to the conversation around our mental health and mental well-being. That's a little abstract, but think about it for a little bit and just humor me as I talk through it. How often is it that in our day-to-day lives, we're just running through life so fast and things are happening left and right? Whether it's planting time, it's harvest time, it's time to work cows, or we got to load and ship calves, or, there's just so much going on. And we're just trying our best to keep up. And then all of a sudden, one little thing goes wrong. We get a little stressed out. It's bothering us just a little bit. But check engine light isn't even on. So I'm just going to keep powering through it. I'm going to keep on rolling. So you do. You keep on driving. You keep on going. Well, then other things start happening, and it keeps on compounding. Not only do you have all those things going on at the work and farm level, but on top of that, you've got to get the kids up in the morning, get them dressed, get them fed, and get them to school. Or maybe you've got recitals or ball games in the evening, or you want to get the whole family to church on Sunday, or maybe the wife scheduled dinner with the in-laws, and we all know how stressful that can be. I don't know, maybe that's just my household. But sorry. Anyways, either way, all these things keep on happening left and right. It just keeps on compounding and weighing you down and dragging on you. And that little bit of stress that you felt at the beginning, it's just building up, and you feel it even worse now. It's been festering. Your check engine light is on. You know that something is wrong. You're not hitting on all cylinders. You're not running at 100%. But do you stop? No. It's just like me trying to get up to turkey season. Nope. You can't stop. You got too much going on. And that's when things really start breaking down. That's when things really start taking a toll. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe we have to do a better job at being a little more proactive in treating ourselves and our mental health and well-being, kind of like we do our vehicles, in the sense that maybe every now and then we've just got to stop and work on a little service or a little maintenance, do a little tune-up every now and then. Well, what does that mean? That means exactly whatever it needs to mean for you. That's up for you to determine. For each and every one of you, it might be different and unique. It might be just finding somebody that's a close family member or friend, a confidant that you can just open up to and talk to about anything that's bothering you. Or maybe you're sitting here thinking, that's not me. I can't open up and I can't talk about my personal issues with somebody who's also in my personal life. Well, I'm going to suggest something. You're probably not going to like it, but just hear me out. It would be a humbling experience, but I encourage you to at least consider talking to a professional. Whether that's a therapist or a counselor or somebody, if you've got something that's weighing on you that bad and you're struggling with something, consider going and talking to somebody that is completely unbiased, somebody who is completely impartial, who is not going to judge. And at the same time, if you just feel that neither of those options are for you, then there's one other thing that I'm going to really just implore you to do. Please, at least consider when those things are happening, those things are building up and weighing on you, take a step back from it all. Even if it's just by yourself, just take a step back from it all, unplug, and just work on recharging for a little bit. So whether that's taking some quiet time to meditate, whether that's going to the gym and running it off, or maybe that's getting back into an old hobby that you used to really enjoy but you haven't had time to do in a really long time, find some way of just stepping away from it all and recharging a bit. For me personally, whenever I'm under a lot of stress, there's a handful of things that are my go-tos, but I'll give you one example. A lot of times I turn to Scripture. I'll read Scripture, and I'm not going to stand up here and I'm not going to say that it's for each and every one of you in this crowd, and I'm also not going to say that it's a perfect roadmap that tells me exactly what way to go or exactly what I need to do, but I will tell you this. For me, when I read the Scripture, and I'm in that state of stress or that state of anxiety, it just helps me gain a little better perspective. It helps me to remember who's really in charge and in control. And on top of that, it helps me to remember all the good things in life that I need to be fortunate for, and not to dwell on those things that are bothering me. But folks, whatever you end up deciding to do, whatever route you choose to go, I just ask that we please be a little more proactive in terms of opening up and communicating whenever these things are bothering us. We've got to do a better job at stopping every now and then for a little service or a little maintenance. I know that there's a lot of you in this crowd who are probably sitting back and saying, well, that's a really good theory. That sounds nice, but I still don't understand that conversation. How do I open up to somebody? Or if somebody opens up to me, what am I supposed to say? Well, I'll tell you this. I can't give you the exact best advice. I can't give you the perfect thing to say. But I'll leave you with this little bit of encouragement. You won't ever do near as bad as some of the conversations that yours truly has been involved in. I promise you that. And a prime example is just a few weeks after losing my dad, senior year me, I was encouraged to go and talk to my local high school guidance counselor. I did. I set up the appointment to go and talk to her. You will never in a million years guess the wisdom that this woman imparted on me that particular day. I sat in there and she leaned back in her chair, and I will never forget, to this day, she told me, you know, Marshall, you should really be careful. You really should. You know why? Because a lot of times that's genetic, that's hereditary, and you're probably at risk of doing the same exact thing that your dad did. I said, well, thank you very much, Dr. Phil. Really regretting not going to lunch hour and getting my slice of pizza today. But folks, that's a terrible story. It is a morbid story. It is a 100% true story. That really happened, and I will never forget it. But I tell you that story because I just want to point out how taboo of a topic the mental health conversation can be. And we've got to stop that. Because personally, I don't think it has anything at all to do with having the best answer. I don't think it has anything to do with giving the perfect advice. I think it's a whole lot to do with just being willing to open up and communicate. I really do. I think that the mentality, the mindset would be a whole lot better for everyone involved, especially the people who are struggling, if we all knew that we could open up to somebody and ultimately that somebody cared. Ladies and gentlemen, as I get ready to close out today, that is hands down the most critical point that I can leave you with today. Always remember that somebody cares. Always. We're here at the Young Farmers and Ranchers Conference. Every single person is here by choice. They're here because they're passionate about the industry. They're here because they're passionate about their business. You're here because you're passionate about the success and longevity of this industry. So whether you realize it or not, you care about each and every person in this room. So if you look to your left, you look to your right, those people next to you, they care. Your family, your friends back home, they care. And whether you believe in them or not, I personally believe there's a God, and I believe that He cares. Don't ever lose sight of that. To this day, it absolutely breaks my heart. Breaks my heart to think back to all those years ago that my dad was working on that forklift, all by himself, thinking that nobody cared. Or even worse, thinking that this world would be better off without him. I think back a lot of times to the conversations I wish I could have on that day. If I would have gone to work on that forklift with him, or if I could go back and have that conversation, what would I say? I've thought about it a lot of times, and I'll share something with you. This is something I would most certainly tell my dad on that particular day if I had the opportunity. I'd point out everything great about that day, whether it be the grass growing, whether it be the blue sky or the white puffy clouds in it or the sun shining down on us. I'd point out every single great thing about that day. I'd tell my dad, I'd say, Dad, how amazing is it that we have somebody who decided to create all of this for us? How amazing is it that we have a creator who decided to make this entire world, this entire universe for all of us? I look at my dad and I tell him, Dad, how impressive is it that that same creator decided that the world needed you? I'll save all of you the suspense. There's never been a day since that happened that this world has been any better off without my dad. There has never been a day where I personally have been any better off without my dad, and I'm going to tell each and every one of you the same exact thing. For whenever you're stressed out or whenever things are bothering you, I want you to remember that it is absolutely impressive that the world decided it needed each and every one of you. And for the people who care about you, this world will never be any better off without you in it. Folks, I understand that the ag industry is not for the weak of heart. I know it. To this day, my grandpa still rides around in his pickup truck with the bumper sticker on the back that says, "Farming ain't for sissies." No, Granddaddy, it is not. It is not. But in my humble opinion, I personally believe that the American agriculturalist is one of the most toughest and most resilient people in this entire world. And I believe that we can make it through any struggle or any challenge that comes our way. But we're not 100% tough 100% of the time. We're going to get stressed out. We're going to get worried. That's agriculture. That's farming. That's life in general. It doesn't make us any less human. It sure doesn't make us any less successful. And folks, we can't let it weigh us down. So Georgia Young Farmers and Ranchers, as you leave here and you return back home, as you return back to your respective operations and businesses, what I want to ask each and every one of you is, when you do feel stressed out, when you do feel worried, don't let it build up. Open up, talk about it, try to confront it head on. And at the end of the day, don't ever lose sight of the fact that somebody cares. Thank you.